Are you ready?
Audio.
Welcome, everybody, to our brand new show here on the Southeastern Sports Network, the Pick Six Show College Football Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Cassidy, and alongside we've got Scott. We've also got another picker, Greg Lindsay, and we've got a guest picker this week, Ken Kapperman. And on this show, here's how things are going to go. We're going to have 6 college football games to pick from each week, starting today. And we're going to talk a little bit about that game, a little bit of facts, and then we're going to make our pick. Then we're going to go on to the next game, make our pick, and such on. And all these games, we try our best to pick the best games of the week, the ones that we think are going to be very competitive, no matter if that's in the SEC, ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, independents, what have you. If it's ranked, we like ranked versus ranked games. Top 25 games. We'd love to pick those. So that's how this show's going to go. And Scott, thank you for joining us on this first edition of the Pick Six Show.
As always, Thomas, thank you for letting me join you.
All right, folks. So let's go ahead and get started on our first game, which is actually just got underway a few minutes ago. Our very first game, you've got number 21, Southern Cal versus number 23, Illinois. Illinois just lost 2 weeks ago on the road to Indiana, 63-10. So they just got curb stomped pretty good 2 weeks ago. USC is a 6.5-point favorite coming all the way over from the West Coast over to Illinois. Interesting, a 12 o'clock game. So that's kind of an interesting, thing for USC. How's that travel going to affect them coming all the way over from the West Coast? And so with that being said, let's go ahead and get into our picks for this ball game here. Scott, you want to go first?
Well, thank you, Thomas, for this first week, for this first game on the slate. I'm going to go with USC. I just think USC just has a better offense this year than Illinois, and I think it's just going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I'm going to go ahead and go with Southern Cal too. I think their offense is really good. I think it might be a little bit closer than that 6.5 points, considering the travel and the early start. They may be a little bit sluggish, but so I'm going to go with the Southern Cal. Greg is going to go with the Illinois, with the home team, the Fighting Illini. And what has Ken got?
Well, give me just a second to pull it up here. All right, Ken is going with something a little bit different this week. He is going with Illinois over USC.
That's a very interesting call. So we got 2 for Southern Cal and 2 for Illinois. Very interesting on that one. And now we're going to move on to our second game, currently also in progress. Number 22, Fighting Irish and Notre Dame versus Arkansas Razorbacks. Notre Dame, since they're 1-2, every week now is a playoff do-or-die game for them. I can't imagine Notre Dame getting in their playoffs with a third loss at any point in the year. And Arkansas, they've had a hard time the last couple of weeks finishing games. They had a big lead on Memphis last week and lost it. I think they had 28-10. And they had Ole Miss right where they wanted them, and they coughed that up 2 weeks ago too. So there's a good pattern, a disturbing pattern for their Hogs that they can't finish ball games. Notre Dame on the road only favored by 4.5. That's kind of interesting. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but with that being said, let's go ahead and get on with the picks. I'll go ahead and start this one off first. I'm going to go with Notre Dame in this game. Scott, what are you going to go with?
Well, Thomas, that's an interesting pick for you, but I'm going to have to say not so fast and go with Arkansas. I think Arkansas is finally going to be able to finish a game. Notre Dame has not been that good this year. They've struggled mightily on a few occasions, and this is in Arkansas, and I believe this is the first time Notre Dame's been in Arkansas. And as a Tennessee fan, I could just tell you personally how hard it is to go into Arkansas and win a game. So I'm going to have to go with Arkansas in this game. And as far as Ken's pick, Ken's going to go against me and go with Notre Dame. What do you have for Greg? You might want to repeat. We had some technical difficulties and your microphone didn't pick up. So who'd you have for Greg?
Greg has got Arkansas. And I don't necessarily agree with Notre Dame struggling their first two opponents. They played very tough against Miami on the road and played pretty good against Texas A&M. So I wouldn't say that they have struggled. They didn't get blown out. They lost the A&M game on the last possession. They hung in against Miami on a couple of bad calls. But, I mean, I actually think that 4.5 points is not enough. I think Notre Dame is going to blow them out of the water. And so with that one, we will go to our third game of the week. And this one is quite an interesting one. Number 1, Ohio State on the road going to Washington. Ohio State last year, 2024 national championship champions as they steamrolled the Volunteers in that first round. Both teams here are undefeated. Could be a high-scoring game. Washington has really lit up the scoreboard the last couple of weeks. And, but then again, though, Ohio State does have a very, very good defense, as they proved that in week 1 against Texas, beating the Longhorns. And they also have very good offense, too. But, I mean, Washington's Husky Stadium is very tough to play in, and you've got a rookie quarterback going in. Yeah, he's got he's got a stud wide receiver and some good running backs, but, if this game is close in that third and fourth quarter, all of a sudden you could be looking at a big upset. And Ohio State is an 8.5-point favorite in this game. And we'll start off with Greg. Greg has got the Buckeyes winning. I'm going to go with Washington. I've just got a feeling that Washington – I'm going to stick with Washington, but Ohio State is probably going to win, but Washington's going to cover this game, and they're not going to lose by more than 8.5 points. But I'm still going to go with Washington, though. Scott, what do you and Ken got?
Well, Thomas, Ken has got Ohio State. And I'm going to go on the opposite end of that spectrum, and I'm going to go with you and say I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm going to go with Washington as well because I think Ohio State has been a good ball club, but like you said, it's tough to go into Washington and win, and I just feel like tonight's the night that Washington is going to have the edge.
Yeah, I mean, this game is going to be really interesting. With that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to our fourth game, and this one's another interesting ball game. And that one was at the Ohio State Washington's a 3:30 kick, and this was also a 3:30 kick between Louisiana State University at Ole Miss. This is what they call the Magnolia Bowl. Today is the 114th meeting between these two schools. LSU leads in this series 64-42 to 4 ties. LSU won last year's event 29-26 in Baton Rouge in overtime. And both teams are 4-0. And Ole Miss at home, a 2.5-point favorite. So technically, you usually get 3 to 3.5 points as the home favorite. So what that tells me by 2.5 is that pretty much tells me that Vegas views this game as a toss-up, which it should be, considering that LSU's offense has struggled against Florida in the last couple of weeks, and Ole Miss has played really good behind their backup quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss. So Greg has got Ole Miss in this game. Greg's got Ole Miss. I'm going to take LSU. I like their quarterback. Scotty, who do you and Ken have?
Well, Thomas, I am going to go with Ole Miss. I feel like Ole Miss, being the home team, is just going to pull it off. You know, personally, for me, I've never been a Lane Kiffin fan after what he done to the Volunteers, but I'm going to have to pull for the Lane train tonight and say that they're going to teach those Tigers how to actually play, and it's going to be, I think they're going to cover the spread. As far as Ken's going against my pick, and Ken is going with LSU this week. So kind of all four of us are kind of going canceling each other out, I guess.
Yeah, this is a really interesting ball game. I don't trust. I don't know. I just got an uneasy feeling about Ole Miss. I really think LSU's defense is really good. They're very talented. But then again, though, I mean, they haven't really played a high prolific offense like Ole Miss either. They played good against Clemson, but everybody's spanked up on Clemson. So that's nothing to write home about. But we'll really find out which one of these teams is the real deal after today. And our next game, our fifth game, we have got, and this is a 7:30 kick on NBC, a very interesting ball game. We've got Oregon going to Happy Valley to face Penn State, number 6 versus number 3. Or, is that right? 6 versus 3? Yeah, 6 versus 3. And 6th all-time meeting between these two programs. A rematch from last year's 2024 Big Ten National Conference Championship, Oregon won that game 45-37. Both undefeated teams, both this is their first big test. Penn State getting the field goal at home, like we just talked about. So, interesting ball game. What do you and Ken got for this one?
Well, Thomas, I think, like you said, I think this is going to be a very good ball game. I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game because I know both these offenses have put up really big numbers. And like I heard earlier today, it's going to come down to the tight ends. And Penn State's got a heck of a good tight end on their roster this year. It seems like they've got a stable of them. James Franklin always knows how to recruit. I'm going to go with Penn State. I think Penn State's going to knock the Ducks off. Don't get me wrong, Dan Lanning is a very good coach, but I think he's met his match in Franklin this week. And Ken is going to go with Penn State as well. So you got 2 Penn States here.
All right. So Greg went with Oregon in this game. And I'm also going to go with Penn State. I think at home, under whiteout conditions, nighttime game. I think this is going to be a very close ball game. But give me Penn State at home. Very good ball game. This could be, depending on the next game that we're fixing to pick, this could steal a little bit. Everybody thinks the Georgia-Bama game is going to be the most watched. Well, this game could really eat into that. The Penn State-Oregon game could really take a lot of viewers away from that Georgia-Bama game. And that being said, let's go ahead and get our last game of this week. You have number 17, Alabama, versus number 5, Georgia. A couple of interesting things about this game. Kirby Smart is 1-6 versus Alabama since he became the Georgia head coach. The only victory for Kirby was in 2021 in Indianapolis in the national championship game, 33-18. First time since Kirby's taken over the Georgia program, first time Alabama has come to Athens. Every other game has been either in Tuscaloosa, in Atlanta, or in Indianapolis. So interesting tidbit there. Alabama's already got a loss to Florida State early in the year, 31-17 on the road. And there's a common theme with Bama the last 2 years and on the road. As they're 2 and under the board, they're 2-4 in their last 6 road games, and their last 2 losses have not been close. They've been the last 2 losses. You got the 14 points against Florida State that opened the year, and then you've got their game on the road in Norman last year where they got thumped 24-3. So, and also another thing here, Georgia's home streak of 32 consecutive wins at home. Really interesting just to try to ratchet that up to 33 tonight. And Georgia's also coming off of a 44-41 overtime victory in Knoxville against the Volunteers. A lot of tears were rolling down 2 weeks ago from the Vols.
If I could just interject something here real quick, Thomas, and I think this is something interesting, and I don't think you've covered this, but Bama's opening season loss to FSU 31-17. I know all the Bama fans out there in Bama country and Tideland is thinking that FSU is a good team, all this. But let's go back and look. FSU did get upset last night by a Virginia team who's just – they're decent, but I don't think Virginia is really high up there in the top 10 yet. How bad does this FSU loss now look toward Bama? You know, this is something that I think adds a little bit of extra spice to tonight's Georgia-Bama game, because now if Georgia comes out and beats Bama, that's 2 losses off the rip for Bama, whose schedule does not get any better because they've got Vanderbilt coming up. Then they've got Tennessee. They have to go to South Carolina. It doesn't get any easier for Bama. How bad does last night's loss from FSU to Virginia look now toward Bama?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. A lot of Alabama folks have used the excuse that Florida State is really good, and Florida State is a good program. They're a lot better than they were last year. But then again, though, it's not the FSU, it's a Bama problem that they've got going on the road. They have not looked – the only game that they looked really good in last year going on the road was a 42-13 whipping they put on LSU last November. That's the only game that I've seen that they looked really good. They struggled. They lost to Vandy, and they were down by double digits in that game to Vanderbilt too. They lost, like we said, they got curb stomped at Oklahoma. They got beat by the Vols in Rocky Top, and then Florida State this year. I'm really curious to see how they come out tonight on a raucous environment, 7:30 kickoff. They haven't been to Georgia since 2015. So I'm really curious to see if the road problems continue for Alabama, or can they get it or can they get it fixed? I think the story of this game, who's got the pass rush, who can get the quarterback, whoever can get to the quarterback, cause a turnover here and there, is probably going to win the game, and who can run the ball better. With that being said, let's go ahead and get to the picks.
Well, I was going to say too is I don't want to say it yet, but at the same sense, you kind of get the feeling tonight that with the loss to FSU, now not looking so good since FSU has got upset and they're starting to show some signs that they're coming back down. You kind of get the feeling tonight's game has kind of got that playoff implication of if Bama loses, that's 2 losses. That's lost to a ranked Georgia team in the top 5. That's also a loss to an FSU team who's gotten upset by a Virginia team who's not that good. So you kind of have to have the feeling that if Bama, this kind of becomes a must-win game for them because they have to have this win in the back pocket. Because Vanderbilt, at some point, I feel like Vanderbilt is going to start to come back down to earth. They've got Alabama. They've still got to play Tennessee at Neyland and a few other tough games. They're going to start coming back, and they've not really played anybody major. South Carolina's not that good. Missouri's not that good, really. So they're going to come back down eventually when they hit that tough schedule stretch. But we don't know where Tennessee is going to be by the third Saturday night in October because Tennessee's got Mississippi State today, and we've got Arkansas before we have to go on the road to Bama. So really, at some point, you don't know where LSU is going to be or Auburn. So for Alabama, this is a must win for the board because if you don't win, you may not have the chance to get that many more quality wins to get yourself into the playoffs. And with teams like Penn State, Oregon up there, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, there's teams up there is not going to drop out of the top 10 quickly. So the more DeBoer has trouble, this kind of gets that playoff implication, and I think it's going to be really interesting. But what was your and Greg's pick?
Well, I was going to go first with you and Ken.
Well, Ken, we all know where Ken's going. Ken has been a good family friend of ours for over 10 years, but we all know he's on the wrong side of the fence. He is going with Georgia tonight by 7. And I am going to go with, you have to, in a game like this, you have to look at this. You have to look at everything. It's a home game for Georgia. Kirby Smart's going to have the ball fired up and ready. You almost got beat by a very good Tennessee team. You had to come and go into overtime and beat them by a field goal. It's just everything points to Georgia winning it. Everything. So I'm going to have to go with Georgia.
Oh, that's a shocker. That's like three. That's like three picks that you've done changed in the course of 10 minutes.
Well, hang on a minute. But there's one key thing though. And I know our other analyst, Greg, will give me trouble over this, but you also know at the same sense that DeBoer knows this is a game he has to pull off tonight to continue his playoffs. He also knows this is a game he has to pull to keep his seat cooling off and not getting any hotter. Some will say that the Tide is going to come into Athens, Georgia, and upset Bama by 2 touchdowns.
That's a stretch. By 2 touchdowns, that's really bold. So, Greg,
I see a lot of deep balls passing today. Tennessee showed the rest of the SEC in college football. You want to beat the Georgia Bulldogs? Just drop back and throw it far, and you've got the Bulldogs beat.
So, Greg has got Alabama to win. I'm going with Georgia, of course. I think this game is going to be close. I'm not going to say Georgia's going to blow Alabama out, but Georgia's going to lead. Georgia's going to lead from wire to wire. They're not going to trail at all in the game. I'm not saying a blowout, but Georgia's going to control it at home. You know, you've got to think Kirby's tired of hearing all the crap about being 1-6 against Bama. At home, this is one of those games that if you want to show that the SEC, the Southeastern Conference, still runs through Athens, you need to win this game. And, you know, the thing is, does Alabama have to win this game to stay in the playoff hunt? No, because they could run the table and go 10-2 and they're in. And they only lost one. You know, they could still very well be in the SEC title game at the end of the year with one conference loss. But a loss here to Georgia really does hurt. You know, it really makes it to where they've got to win out every game. There's no margin for error now. You can't drop a third game. You know, especially with LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, teams like that. You can't drop that third game because you're not going to get past him in the playoff hunt. So I think Georgia's going to win it. Like I said, they'll never trail. I mean, that might be 3-0, 7-3, 21-17, but at home. And that's, folks, that's our games. That's our picks for this week. We ask that you follow and like and subscribe to our YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok channels at East Tennessee Media and Southeastern Sports Network. We would like to thank our sponsors, East Tennessee Media, Eileen Lindsay's Movies Memories Museum, and Tammy's Cakes in Locust Grove, Georgia. And that is all the time that we got today. Join us again next week for the Pick Six Show. Have a great Saturday, everybody.